Oh boy.
Oh my goodness. We are back, my friends. This is the podcast called There's No Crying in Crochet. And I am Debbie from Madam Stitch, one of your hosts. And the other one is,
Biz from Busy Crochet. Hi, everybody.
and we want to welcome you to this week's podcast. So I don't know if you know it or not, but we've been doing this. We're going to celebrate our 1 year anniversary in a couple of weeks. This is our 42nd episode. I can't even believe it. We're
I
not
know
going to
it.
make 52 at our first anniversary, but that's okay.
Mhm.
Sometimes we just need a little time off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody needs a vacation.
But we're back, and we want to remind you to
Mhm.
subscribe to our YouTube channels, Busy Crochet and Madam Stitch Crochet. As of today, this is the last day that we'll be streaming into our Facebook groups. So if you're watching next week, you'll want to be either on YouTube or on our Facebook pages. You can do it there live, and you can comment as we go, and we'll see your comments,
Mhm.
all of that kind of stuff. All right. So let's get on with business. What is up with you this week? And actually, for the last 3 weeks,
Yeah.
because we pre-recorded a couple of episodes, here
Yes.
we go.
So my life has been so lonely without you, Debbie.
I know. I don't know what to do without you. I mean, now you notice that I'm not a texter. I don't I miss in private, unfortunately. So you didn't really know that I was missing you until I saw you again today, because I'm not constantly texting. That's not my jam. But
Mhm.
you knew that I was,
I,
missing
I
not being with
I'm a
you.
I'm a quietly clingy friend. Like I miss you and I can't wait to talk to you again. And I always think like, oh gosh, I wonder what they're doing. But
Yeah.
I'm the last person that's gonna be like, hey, you know. So
Well,
I
I
just feel
think that
terrible about
we're
it.
alike. There are so many ways that we're alike, Biz, and that's another one. It's like we know we should be texting each other and
Yes.
sharing things along the way, and that's not who I am.
Well, and I
But
feel
that
like
doesn't mean,
she's sharing on social media. I kind of know what she's doing. So we'll talk about it later, right?
yeah, right? We'll catch up when we're in person.
Yes.
So, what special things have you been working on?
Oh, special things. Really, nothing. Nothing special. It's been the thing is that my husband has had some medical issues that we've had to deal with, and I'm not going to go into details, but it involves a cyst and an infection, and it got funky. And so he has seen a doctor. He is on antibiotics. We are working, to get the rest of the cyst out. And if we don't get it out, we're just going to go to the dermatologist and have them deal with it. So I mean, he's doing okay. We did find out that he's got high blood pressure. He was at 196 over 120 at the doctor's. So they put him
Oh,
on meds like right now. So
oh,
his body's responding nicely to it. He takes his blood pressure every day just to make sure and all of that. So it's just been all about him, really. Debbie left me and I have a husband who got sick.
I didn't mean for that to happen. Really, I didn't.
So if you hadn't left, now this is one of those, like if you hadn't left, would it have been the same? Would
I
he have
don't
gotten sick?
know.
Mm.
I don't know. We'll never know. But here
Mm-mm.
we are.
Yes, we are.
Here we
So
are.
you did some really awesome things though, and I want to hear all about it.
Well, I'm not going to take the entire podcast to talk about it, but I just got back from 10 days in Colorado, and it was glorious. Our center of activity was Denver, Aurora to be exact.
Uh-huh.
And I took my husband out for the first half of that 10 days, rented a
Mhm.
car. He mapped out ways for us to go through the mountains. And, for 3 days of mountain driving, we saw three completely different landscapes in the
Oh,
same
it's
mountain range.
awesome.
We're nature people. We love kind of being outside.
Yes.
And so it was awesome to see the beautiful scenery, nothing like we have here, but I
Oh, I
will
can
say
only
it's beautiful
imagine.
where I live. But so that was that. I sent him home, and then I stayed to do 4 days with the Crochet Business Summit, and I'm a firm believer in professional development.
Mhm.
However you get it, you need to get it if you're a business owner, if you do, if you have any sort of career, it's just one of those energizing, fill you with knowledge,
Mhm.
getting to see other people and see other ideas. And I came back with a list that would choke a horse of things that I need to do, those action items, and I'm slowly
Yeah.
getting to them. But for me, it was just a chance for 3 or 4 days to immerse myself in just what is crochet business,
Mhm.
and came back just completely, kind of that energized exhaustion where you need
Yep.
to sleep for 3 days, but you absolutely can't because there's just you got to get it
Yes.
done.
Yes.
But things are settling down now, and I'm getting back into designing, which was really fun. I have a story to tell. Of course, crocheters pack all the crochet things because who
Oh,
knows what
yes.
mood you're going to be in, right? So you
Absolutely.
reserve about half your suitcase for that stuff. I happened I happened to be in the unenviable, and I mean unenviable, position of having finished everything I was working on,
Oh my
and
gosh.
so I really don't design well on the fly. I need to be sitting in my chair working things out. So I
Uh-huh.
didn't do a whole lot of crochet on this trip, which was very disturbing to me. So
That's
I
funny.
came back, pulled out all the things, got 4 projects started again, and now I'm good. I'm good. I've got
It's so funny.
all the that hook is back in my hand, baby, and it's just flying.
And isn't it funny how, like, unsettling it is when you're not constantly working on something? That's exactly what I went through the last couple of weeks is I was finishing up some orders, but my personal projects, I couldn't bring myself to touch them, and it was just
Mhm.
I think I was dealing with brain things. And so once I got those 2 orders done and I was sitting there one day, and I'm like, "What are you doing? You have so much stuff on your agenda. You have got a like, you know how you were talking about choke a horse, you have got a design schedule that you almost can't handle. You better get moving." So
You better get on it.
I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah." So I picked it up and I thought, "I'm just gonna work on this even though I don't feel it, I'm gonna do it."
But then, I don't know about you, then you get into the groove.
Yes.
It's like, yes,
Back in the
okay, things
rhythm.
are starting to move. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a very good place to be. And I will say that I have not bought any yarn. Wait, 2 months, 3 months? Wow. Because I'm shopping my stash, which we're actually going to talk about today. Okay.
Well, I can't
So,
say the same.
well, yeah,
Um, I
my
had some
time will
specific things
come.
though. I had
My
some
time will
specific
come.
things. I've got one design. We're using a specific yarn, and it's a collaboration that I'm working on with another lady, and we're using something really specific. And I
Mhm.
never use it, so I had to buy it. I have
Right.
nothing in my stash, and then I've got two baby blankets that are very specific, and I had to order the yarn. I did it from one place, so I mean it's only one box, but
But you're shopping for specific
oh
projects,
yeah,
which
yes,
we'll
I
also
didn't get
talk
anything
about.
extra.
Yeah, my time will come. I just got an email today from a yarn dyer that I need to buy the yarn. So later today, I'll be buying yarn. So
Oh,
there you
okay.
go.
Then I just don't feel so bad now.
Then you shouldn't feel bad. All right. We need to get to our
We
topic
do,
because
we
I
do.
know the world is just waiting for us to talk about
Right?
the topic for today's episode. And it is 10 tips or more for eco-conscious crochet.
Mhm,
Because we started with 10 tips that we got from a blog post
mhm,
from a colleague of ours, and we're developing from there. So um, I thought I'd just give you a little heads up about what we're talking about in the month of April, which
mhm,
is how do we think about crochet in a more eco-friendly way?
mhm,
How can we reduce our impact on the environment in our crochet, but still crochet all the things that we want?
mhm.
And uh, there are surprisingly lots of ways that we can do that. I was so amazed at doing the research. Biz did a lot of the research for this in advance, and just all the ways that we can make little tiny
Mhm.
changes that
Yeah,
really make big impacts, big
they do.
impacts.
They do.
Um, so before we start, I thought it might be useful for us to see some of the definitions of
Mhm.
things that we're going to be talking with, words we're going to be using today. All right.
Yeah.
So, sustainable, anything that's sustainable means we are able to maintain it indefinitely. So it's something that either rejuvenates itself or we're able to keep using it. We're able to sustain our use of it.
Mhm. It's
We'll
not a one
hear
and done kinda thing.
it's not a one and done. It's definitely not disposable, and disposable is a word we want to not use very often.
Mhm.
The next one we hear a lot, eco-friendly. What does it mean to be eco-friendly? Well,
Mhm.
it's friendly to the environment. It doesn't add harm to
Mhm.
the environment. That can be big, like an oil spill in the Gulf, or it can be small, like
Mhm.
throwing away that paper towel every time you wipe up a spill. It can be
Mhm.
those little things that create bigger impacts.
Mhm.
And the third and final one, and the one that we're really focusing on today, is eco conscious.
Mhm.
So we're Biz and I are spending today making you aware of ways that you can have a a positive impact on the environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Biz, are you ready
I am.
for our
Got my
list?
notes.
All right. So these 10 tips that we're starting with are from the Crafty Therapist.
Mhm.
She wrote a an article that Biz found called 10 Ways to More Eco-Friendly Crochet or Knitting. So we're going to
Mhm.
apply this to crochet. So
And pretty
what
much all
was
summer arts, really.
yeah, and there are actually other ways that I think I made note of. Hopefully we can get to those today. But our
Mhm.
first one is
Make products that are reusable.
mhm, right. So what are some ideas of things that we could crochet that we reuse in our daily life?
Well, I know in my own personal life, I use things like hand crocheted, knitted dishcloths and towels.
Mhm.
Instead of always using paper towels or always using, well, I mean, dishcloths usually get washed anyway, but I like using the cotton ones, but it also is nicer to be able to just wash that stuff and reuse it again and again. But also things like Swiffer covers, those are a really high
Mhm.
disposable item. Um, Things like grocery bags,
Yep.
things like, let's see, I'm going to look on here just because what are some of the other things that I use? I use the rags, I use the towels, even to go so far as I make cotton pint covers for our ice cream. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but a lot of people will grab a paper towel and wrap it around their ice cream so
Ah,
that the
yeah,
hand
yeah.
doesn't get cold and to soak up the moisture,
Right.
the condensation. So I made little pint covers. We just slide the pint in there. It protects our hands. The condensation doesn't get anywhere. And then we just use it over and over and over again. And everybody in the house
And
loves them.
you've got some cute designs. Now we're not doing a
Yeah.
presentation today,
No, no.
but check out her shop and you'll find some really cute, even one with a handle. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're great. So there are lots of different ways that you can lots of different things that you can make. We'll talk about fibers and yarns later, but if
Hmm.
you have a lot of cotton in your stash,
Hmm.
it's a great way to use up that cotton, and cotton is a
Hmm.
great sustainable yarn for all of those. I was thinking produce bags because every time
Hmm.
I buy a lot of produce,
Hmm.
and I bought my produce bags. I didn't make them, but you'll find a lot of patterns for its chains into chain spaces. So they're
Hmm.
mesh
Hmm.
with her, and they don't look like they're very sturdy, but oh my goodness, they hold a ton of stuff.
You know that saying, put 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag?
Yeah,
That that's what those are like. You can fit
yeah.
so much in them. 'Em. They're so sturdy and so strong, especially if you reinforce your handles.
Yep.
They're not gonna stretch down to the floor, and you're not gonna be dragging your produce behind you.
And you can stick them in a laundry bag and stick them in the wash every
Mhm,
week with your towels or whatever,
mhm.
and have those in your bag. Yeah, I that's one thing that I need to start making because I have, some that I bought, but I need a few more produce bags because
Mm,
I buy so much.
yeah.
All right, so let's see what we have next. Oh, I like this one. All right, products that have a use and longevity. So that's kind of coming out what we were talking about in the last point.
Yeah.
Um, but it applies to clothes as well. So, Biz, do
Mhm.
you remember what slow fashion means?
Yes,
SLOW.
yes. At least I think I remember what it means. It's stuff that you create out of, like, handmade items is usually considered a slow fashion because it has to be made, and it's not one of those industrial kind of where, they're pumping out piece after piece after piece.
Right. It's also buying pieces for your wardrobe that are timeless and classic instead
Mm,
of jumping on the latest trend of I'm gonna,
yeah.
add sequins to my denim jacket, but I have to buy a new one and then I'm gonna donate it when I'm done.
Yeah.
That's not slow fashion. So I do a lot of t-shirts and layering,
Mhm,
things that I can use from season to season,
mhm,
and try not to have to buy too much each year to
mhm.
supplement that.
I usually, even in my shirts, I buy the same length sleeve all the time
Mhm.
just because down here, I can do a 3/4 sleeve. I don't like my upper arm, so I prefer a 3/4 sleeve. And so I'll do a 3/4 sleeve year
Mhm.
round just because even when it's warm, I can have a fan or air conditioning or whatever to replace that. So, like, I do the kind of the same thing in my clothing as well. One thing that I got to thinking about is slow fashion, I think, is kind of a newer term because I remember
Mhm.
everybody calling them staples or standards or
Right.
kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
stuff in your garments.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I did find a definition. This is from a website called Good on You, and they say slow fashion is an awareness and approach to fashion that carefully considers the processes and resources required to make clothing and focuses on timeless, high quality designs over trend driven pieces destined for the landfill after a few wears. So
Mm,
that's basically what we're talking about. I will say that I have started to buy spend a little bit more money on the clothing I buy from companies that I know are using processes that are more sustainable, better for the environment. And they, just making sure that I'm going to be able to wear them for the foreseeable future
mhm,
rather than a once and done.
mhm, yes. I think that my clothes become those things just because I hate shopping, and I've never been an on-trend person anyway. Like, I've
Right.
always just worn things that I know I'm going to be able to fit this with several things in my
Hmm.
wardrobe, and I'll be able to mix and match. So, I just I sometimes I think it's a personality thing too, because my daughter, she is definitely not a, staple, slow fashion kinda girl. She she's a whatever's fancy now.
Yeah, there you go. All right. All right, so the next, let's see here. The next one we have is, oh, this is one of Biz's
It
favorites.
is.
Using up those little scrap balls. Talk about
It is
that,
the
Biz.
platform I preach from the most, I think.
Yeah.
Just because quite honestly, the scrap thing really started with me, um, out of necessity. I just didn't have the money to go and buy a whole bunch of new yarn and all of that stuff. I had to shop within my supplies because what else was I going to do? So my love for scrap projects was born there, but now it really has become kind of, like I said, my soapbox, the place that I preach from the
Mhm.
most because as the years have gone by and I've noticed, like you said, the disposability of things and how we are filling up landfills, and and here, even in Florida, we live in Pensacola, and if you've ever been to Pensacola, it's really like an overgrown small town. And so there are certain sections of the city that have dumps. And when you get closer to the dumps, now there really isn't a smell or anything that comes from them, but along the sides of the road, there's trash everywhere. And this is
Yeah.
such a beautiful city. And
Mhm.
I hate seeing all of that.
Right.
Um, that there's just it don't even get me started. Anyway, so out of noticing all of that thing, and I've been kind of absorbing all of that stuff over the years. Scrap projects have become kind of my thing to go to
Mhm.
because it uses what I have. I'm not spending above what my means are. I'm being a good steward. I'm trying to do the best that I can environmentally by creating things that are going to last for a long, long time, and that kind of stuff. So I guess it all depends on how you look at a scrap project.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, at least in my personal stash, we have each of us has a preference as to
Mhm.
what weight of yarn we love to use, what fibers we love to use.
Mhm.
We tend to be a little bit narrower in our choices than we think we are. And
We
if you
are.
actually go it right, we think we've got this broad spectrum of stuff,
Oh
when
my gosh.
in fact, when you gather it all together, you go, "Oh, well, that's all related," and it's because we have a preference that
Yes,
kinda makes decisions for us,
it
we think
does.
we're all smart and what making conscious decisions, but our subconscious going, "No, you really like that over
I'm
there,"
sorry, no, we're
right?
buying the other one.
We're gonna do that one. So you actually probably have a lot of similar fiber contents, a
Yeah.
lot of similar weights,
Mhm.
um, and I think some of my favorite projects to see, I've never tried one, but, one of my favorite projects to see is just using up a ball of yarn until it's gone, then starting the next color, no matter
Love
where it
those,
is, right?
love those.
And they just look so interesting, right?
Yes.
Um, and my love, granny squares. Could there be a more perfect project for scrap yarn?
Mhm,
Please.
mhm.
They are the gods and goddesses of scrap yarn. Yes, they are.
Yes.
That's why they were invented, by the way. So
Yes.
grab all of those granny square. Um, there are other projects that you can use your scrap yarn for, like washcloths,
Mhm,
right? If you've got
mhm,
a lot of cotton, coasters,
mhm,
always having that glass of iced tea or soda or whatever sitting next to me.
mhm,
Um, Ear warmers and headbands.
mhm.
You can even use them for sweaters, blankets, scarves, um, and fill in if you don't have enough in your stash, just fill in with
Mhm.
something else.
Yep.
But you've saved the environment, which
The
is a
other
good
thing that I
thing.
do with a lot of my scrap runs, and you were saying, the projects where you just tie on and you just keep going. I
Hmm.
have always done scrap, rugs with that.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
this is another way for people who are color challenged. There are people who are like, "Oh, I can't put that color next to another one." And I just, like they get really anxious about how to put their colors together. This is one of the ways that I really kind of got over all of that was doing these scrap projects where I'm just going to reach in. I don't care what color it is. I'm tying it on and I'm going. Because you come to realize that, you know what? It doesn't matter what color you put next to another, they belong together. It's all
Hmm.
part of the same rainbow. And whether it's, complementary or it's the third color or it's the secondary color or it's the whatever
Right. Yeah.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the whole triangle thing and there's a big circle. They all belong together.
Yeah. They do.
And a lot of times
I
it's just a matter of hues. If you're really
Yeah.
spastic
Yeah.
about it, it's about hues.
Yeah, I love that idea. In fact, if you've followed us at all, you know that Biz and I are constantly coming up with projects to do
Mhm,
together. We
mhm.
now are booked out, I think, 5 years, but
Probably,
I
yes.
think I think that would be an absolutely fabulous project to take all of our scrap yarns and
Yeah.
make uh, by the way, we just did a project, if you weren't paying attention,
Yes.
mm,
Our
the
first
memories
scrap project
blanket,
together.
right? The memories blanket. Now,
Mm,
I did buy the yarn for mine.
mhm.
I own that,
Mhm.
but Biz did hers from scraps, and a lot of
100%.
the I know, and a lot of the people who did it, are showing off stuff for
Oh
that's
my
a
god.
lot of yarn to have in your stash, right?
I
Yeah.
absolutely love what everybody has
Mhm.
done. I don't care who it is. Because there are some people who they have like every color in the rainbow and they put together these really adorable blankets. And then there are some people who really shop within a particular color zone and you can tell.
Right?
Like
Right?
you probably had two skeins of that color. I can tell.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. Um, but more power to you because I realized that, I was actually responding to somebody online and they're like, "Oh, well, my favorite color is this, but I seem to always have this other color." Or she said, "I don't ever have any orange, but I buy all the colors, but I'm always out of orange." And I'm like, "Well, maybe orange is actually your favorite color." And because I used to think that red was my favorite color until I really paid attention one day. And I buy an awful lot of aqua and coral. I have zero red in my wardrobe. Like if you needed me to wear red tomorrow, I wouldn't be able to find any.
Not gonna happen.
No.
Um, yeah, so, I don't know if you can hear the dogs barking. They're
Yeah,
just
Daisy's having a great time.
well, the door is closed, there is not much else I can do. So, we're just gonna go on with what we're doing. Anyway, Biz, you and I are going to put the link to the memories blanket in the
Yes,
description,
yes,
right,
because
on
it's a great
YouTube?
scrap
Alright, we're
lesson.
gonna do that. Alright, let's move on because we have a
Sorry.
lot to talk about. No, 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 this is great. Alright, this is our next one. Reuse yarn from unfinished or
Mhm,
frog projects. Oh
mhm.
my goodness.
Yes,
Now, if you've been crocheting for any length of time, you've got a whip in your basket
somewhere.
somewhere, and you probably don't remember what it was supposed to be, or the pattern is lost, or you've lost. This happens to me. If I
Mhm.
wait too long, I've lost interest in it, and I'm
That's
just
so
moving
common.
on.
Yep.
So this is a good one for me.
So I had a, shawl that I had made with this sparkly yarn. Hated it, hated it, and it sat there for the longest time, and so I finally frogged it, and I'm like, "Okay." And this yarn has been floating around, let's see, where did it 2011, 2012, so, like, 10 years now, at least 10, 12. It has finally become something, and I just have to show you. This is my reused frogged project. I made a little tassel out of it.
No, that is awesome.
Yes,
That is so awesome.
and it opens up so that you can store little toys inside. So, it doesn't have to be anywhere even in the same wheelhouse as the other project. The other one was this shawl thing that I want, like it was a pattern design I wanted to put out. And every single time I start making this pattern design, I realize how much I hate it. So I finally just stopped trying to make it. But also this shawl that I had done was miserable and I hated it too. So I just took it apart and you did something else, and I love my little castle.
That is just too adorable, too adorable.
So make
I
yourself
s
fall in love with your icky projects.
well, so I started to make placemats last summer for our outdoor table. Our family loves to gather on the deck for a meal,
Yeah.
and we can't put a tablecloth on anymore because my husband drilled a hole in the middle of the table for the umbrella.
Oh
So
no.
that's not gonna work, right? So you gotta have placemats. So I had this brilliant idea that I was gonna do placemats out of squares. Okay, so I love squares, but when
Mhm.
you have to make a gajillion just to get enough placemats, you go, I'm done now. I just ca and so they sat in a basket over here.
Mhm.
So I came up with a different design that's just a square. It's kinda based on this guy, but,
Okay.
um, but it's
I've seen
square.
that one. That one came out recently, didn't it?
Well, I did the one with the little squares last summer, and
Okay.
you haven't seen you may have seen the placemat in a work in progress, but,
I think I did.
yeah, but I'm taking those squares apart and using that yarn instead of buying more because gosh darn it, I already have
Yes.
the yarn, right?
Yes.
So reusing from unfinished, undesirable, done with that project,
Yes. No
and
matter how
making
much
them
you hate it
something
in its current
new.
form, take it apart and do something that you love with it.
Well, that's when you realize how well you weave in your ends.
Oh
Cause
god.
yeah,
Mm. Mhm.
So there's
Mhm.
another, yeah. Okay, but I digress.
That's another podcast.
That's another podcast altogether. Thank you. Okay, next up, choose projects with a specific purpose or a recipient in mind. Now, Biz,
Yeah.
you were just talking about this. We asked about what yarn you were buying, and you could
Yes.
name all the projects,
Yes.
right?
And now
Um,
I'm gonna be honest, from the very beginning, I've always been that way. I
well,
was never
kudos to you.
I always felt guilty. That was my problem is because like, I'm gonna say, I have always not had money, all right? So, we have always had to be very frugal and thrifty with what we have. And so for me, when I started crocheting again, I only bought what I was planning to use, and if I had leftovers,
Mhm.
that's fine. My stash when I originally started was so small. I mean, like, small. And
Wow.
so it's grown over the years only because I owned a yarn store for 3 years.
Mm,
And so when I accumulated a lot being there.
right?
But even now, every only once in a while, I get a hair and I buy yarn and then it sits there and I'm looking at a pile of it right now that I bought because I had a wild hair. And eventually I'll get through all of it. But that doesn't happen very often.
Okay, so it's confession time for me because I'm a sucker for a hank of hand-dyed yarn. I'm a
Mhm.
sucker for it. The colors are so gorgeous, and I absolutely adore going to the Maryland Sheep and Wool. I'm very lucky in that I live
You are.
close enough to two of the best sheep and wool festivals in the entire country, the Maryland
Wow.
and Rhinebeck. And so occasionally I'll go up to one to Rhinebeck or across to Maryland. And I love supporting my dye yarn
Yes.
people by buying their yarn. And it used to be I'd come home with sock yarn. I don't make socks. I don't like to make socks. Hate to knit them, and I don't like to wear crocheted ones. Why was I buying sock yarn?
Oh my gosh.
But I will say that I have I have a mission right now of taking all of that yarn and I'm designing things that use one hank of sock yarn, right? Or and you're going to see some of those designs coming out in the next few weeks because I've got 3 in the pipeline that are all
Nice.
done. So I'm not buying anymore. Just not going to do it
Oh my
unless I have
gosh.
a project right here.
Yes. No,
Yep.
I had quite a few because of the store, because of the yarn store. I
Mhm.
had quite a few just single skeins of sock yarn floating around my stash. And so a couple years ago, I did that where I went and I designed specifically some toys that used one skein of yarn for the whole thing,
Yep.
the ears, the wings, everything. You didn't need any other yarn. And those were really, really fun to do. I did kind of burn through the rest of my yarn stash because I do like making socks. It's one of my favorite things to make, but I have to be in a particular mood because I
Mm.
always get second sock syndrome where I loved making sock number 1,
This
but
is
sock number 2
great.
is like it's kind of like making the arms and legs for amigurumi. It's like, "Oh my god, I have to make 4 of these?" So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I get it. I get that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Right. So make sure you know who you're and one of the things that the author of this article mentioned was what if the recipient doesn't love it? What do you do then? You know?
Grr. Yeah.
Know who you're making this for and
Mhm.
try to make for darn sure they're going to love it and use it
Yeah.
cuz
Well,
that
the
gets
girls that I'm making baby blankets for this summer, I ran the colors by them. 'Em. I'm like, "This
ooh
is
nice.
every this is every portion. This is what it's being used for." And we also very much discussed what the pattern was going to be. So I rarely anymore do I make gifts that people don't know they're getting,
Mm.
just because I don't like giving things to people that they don't like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too much work.
It is too much, and it's so disappointing after you spent so much time,
It
right?
is. It is. It's very disheartening. So, every once in a while, and now I'm the kind of person who I've always got a project going just like you. So a lot of times I have like leftover blankets, things that I just made because I wanted to, that kind of stuff. I'll use those for like hospice gifts or that kind of stuff where I'm giving like a prayer blanket to somebody who's in the hospital, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Very cool. All right, next up on our list is plan the projects and only buy from them. So that's basically what we were just talking about. Um, making sure that what you're going to make, your yarn is going to be used for, right?
Yeah.
So
Plan
that one
projects and
is
only buy for them. Well, yeah.
that's
Okay.
tough, but it's actually not as tough when you design everything. So you have to be
And
pretty specific when
I
you
was just
design.
gonna say the hard part is I never know how much yarn I need when I'm designing a new project because it's new.
Well, that's true. But
So
you well,
I have a
I tend
roundabout
to
idea
be
of what I need.
I tend to be monochromatic. You don't. So it's a
No,
little
yeah.
harder for you to
Oh.
estimate how much you're gonna need of each color. So
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before about one of the projects that I have going in the background, one of my designs. I decided this one was gonna be done with DK weight because I'm being overrun with DK weight yarn.
mm,
And I thought I can get more characters into the blanket using a smaller yarn. But I did have to go and buy a couple of skeins of a specific color because lo and behold, I don't have any royal purple. The one color I didn't have
and that one is kind of critical to this blanket.
for the whole thing. So,
Yes, a
okay,
little
so
important.
you've seen that meme that says, I've found a new project, but none of the 5,000 skeins that I have match. I literally live that
And
every
that
single
was
time I
it.
find a new project. So yeah, but I that's what I'm trying to burn through right now. But normally I do mine in like a worsted weight. So I yeah, it's hard to plan sometimes.
But we power through. But
We do, we do.
we try really hard
Uh-huh.
not to buy a ton of extra yarn for
Hmm.
that new project,
Yeah,
right?
because you just know where to go with it anymore.
Nope. All right, and you can't return it. You really can't.
No.
All
Oh my
right.
gosh. When I owned my yarn store, and I know you don't want to hear this, but when I owned my yarn store, people used to bring yarn back to the store and it smelled so bad like smoke. I would have to put it
Oh,
outside. And here's a tip for anybody that ever uses yarn that smells funky. If you put it outside for about 2 to 3 days, the natural oxygen in the air will suck the smell out of
good tip, Biz.
it. Mhm.
Good tip. All right. Next,
Yeah.
clear out your stash. Okay,
Mhm.
story time.
Okay.
Okay, that's part of it. It goes ceiling to floor,
I'm not
right?
showing mine.
Well, that's not all of it. I'm in the process of a very long and it's taking forever because I'm at the point where everything is just vomited all over my floor.
Nice.
But what's happened because I did this, so everything is organized by weight,
Mhm.
by
Very
color
pretty.
type. Um, I am now shopping my stash. So I want to give you an example. So um, that where is it? I never can find it. There. Okay. So there, see that one is half empty.
Yeah.
I'm actually making the project that those were intended for. And it takes a lot of yarn and I'm halfway through it. So
Nice. Is
that
that
one
good or
so
bad?
the beauty of clearing your stash
Oh, I was gonna
is
say, do
that
you
you
have
have
enough for
room
your
for
project?
other sorry?
Do you have enough for your project left there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
suddenly
Yeah, I have
concerned for
enough.
you.
No, do not be concerned. I bought plenty to begin with. Trust me
Good.
on that one. Um, but that's
Yes.
I've been shopping my stash, and once I
Yes.
got it organized, it's not that I didn't know what I had, I
Mhm.
just didn't know how it all fit together.
Mm.
So now I'm going over and it's like having my own private yarn store. It's
Mhm.
kinda
Yes.
cool.
Isn't it kind of fun when you go over there and because my yarn store, right in. So my yarn stash is right in front of me, and where I do most of my work is right here. So every once in a while, when I'm daydreaming, I just look and I go, "Oh, I could use that, and I could use
Oh, I
that."
know.
And just
Oh,
like it feeds my creativity to be able to see what I
yeah.
have.
Which means then we have 15 designs to do before August instead
Yes.
of the usual, right? But we
We just have
digress.
to say no. At some point, we have to learn the word no.
Well, I'm very good with the word no, but with yarn, there's a different standard here. All right. So moving on. Next up, consider eco-friendly yarn. Now, Biz, you know more about this than I do because you've written articles on it. So
I do have
describe
an
a
eco.
little bit about, we did another podcast about stuff like this.
Yeah.
So just really quickly, could you explain maybe some fibers that are
Mhm,
eco-friendly, some
mhm,
practices that are not eco-friendly, that sort of thing?
mhm. I'll just very quickly, your eco-friendly yarns are gonna be anything that's a natural fiber that comes from either plant-based or, wool, sheep, that kinda stuff. Anything that is easily sustainable, like what we talked about, where it can be
Mhm.
easily reproduced without, putting a a stretch what that's not the word, a strain on the environment. So
Right.
that kind of thing. And then the other things that are also very good for the environment is using recycled yarn, and that is taking plastic fibers and they break it down. And so if I mean like if you're aware, acrylic yarn is plastic. But what they do is they then weave it or twist it with cotton a lot of times,
Mhm.
and then they make recycled yarn, which I've used several of them. It depends on which ones you get. So I mean, like, I hate buying things online, but sometimes you can't help it. A lot of them are very soft now. They used to be
Mhm.
very, very hard, and it was like, oh, you can only use this to make a dishcloth with. But now they're getting to the point where they want you to use this stuff for garments. One thing that I am using for an upcoming project is bamboo. Bamboo is an amazing eco-friendly yarn.
Yeah, that's really soft.
Yes, it is. It's extremely soft. So any kind of natural fiber, whether it's animal or it's plant-based. Um it Denise says I enjoy respun. It's nice. That is I believe a Lion brand yarn, and it's one I haven't had the chance to use yet. So I'm looking forward to that. But as far as practices and things like that, um the biggest and hardest thing eco wise when it comes to our yarn is the dyeing process, and it's not
Mhm.
really something that we can get away from. I mean, you have to make a decision whether or not you are going to support large yarn companies or if you're going to support smaller companies. Usually the smaller companies have a smaller eco impact. The large companies are the ones, but this is across all fibers, so we're not talking just yarns. This is across,
Mhm.
like, clothing production, etc. The
Right.
dyeing process is so hard because it uses so much water, and
Yeah.
it's the runoff of the water, the dyeing, that actually ends up hurting the environment because it blocks the sun from getting to the plants and it hurts the environment that way. So I
Yeah.
mean, if you can look at smaller, more ethically sourced places, there's several of them. And I did a podcast episode with oh my god, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I should have been more prepared, but I will put it in the note information. She is actually part of a group where they ethically source all of their yarn, and it is uh small farm, that kind of stuff. So I'll put
Yeah.
that information in the description. But I mean, you can do it. There's a yarn company that I love called Good Loops. Their yarn comes
Mhm.
from South Africa. It is a small company that uses local. It's provided for local and not environmental, but like monetary, so that it helps them. My brain just keeps farting all over the place. But it helps them economically, and then they also strive to use very a low water consumption in
Mhm.
their dyeing process, and they reuse their waters, etc. So it's a really nice company, and their yarn is very, very nice. So a lot of times you're going to spend extra for
Mhm.
eco-friendly yarns. I'm just going to say it is more expensive to make them eco-friendly, which sucks, you know, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like I want to eat better, and they're going to charge more for vegetables instead of the boxed
Mhm.
nasty stuff that, like makes you
Right.
gain weight and gives you heart attacks. So, um it's it's a choice. It's just all in how you want to
Mhm.
approach it.
Yeah.
I know I talked a lot. I'm
Another
sorry.
No, no, no. Another company that I really love is Darn Good Yarn. They do the same
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
And I decided at Christmas to treat myself to a subscription box
Oh,
because
how
they
nice.
were offering small amounts of recycled yarn. And
Mhm.
in the box, they include um, the name and the story of the person in, it's not Africa, I think they do India,
Awesome.
of the person that's benefited from the sale of that
Mhm.
box,
That's really cool.
helping them with their business. So I love their business practices, just like Good Loops. Those are two really good companies. And
Mhm.
it's not that expensive.
Mhm.
It's more than the big box yarn companies, but
Mhm.
um, the yarns are gorgeous, and you know
Mhm.
that you're getting something
Mhm.
that's ethically good for the environment.
And the one thing else that I will say about Good Lubes, they will work with designers. They like to work with designers to get their product out there. So if you're a designer, maybe think about talking with them and seeing if you can work out a project with them. The other thing is I love the smell of their yarn. It
Mhm.
smells so good. I don't know what it is that they do with it, but it has the most amazing smell to it. It doesn't have that really stinky, over
Mm,
saturated,
right.
dye smell. It's just amazing. So, like, it just it kind of makes you feel really good about it.
Yeah. All right, moving right along.
Yes.
If you happen to be a person who makes and sells and ships,
Mhm.
think about your packaging, right?
Mhm.
So, we've all gotten the random box when we've ordered something, and it's got 3/4 of the box is filled with paper to keep the little thing that you ordered from sliding around the
Floating
box.
around.
So that, what do you do with that paper? Or the big styrofoam or plastic form that something is in. So
Mhm.
if you make or sell crochet or
Mhm.
anything like that, think about the packaging you're using. Can you support a company that also has the same mindset of being eco-friendly, of being conscious of what they're doing for the environment, using recycled materials, shipping in smaller containers, that sort of thing?
Mhm. A lot of times I will use the nylon see-through bags,
Mhm.
just because those will get used again. A lot of times
Right.
people will use them for other things. So but I have to admit, I just got an order from Amazon, and sure enough, there was this big, huge pile of brown paper in there. Now, you can burn that stuff if you have that ability to do it within your city limits, that kind of stuff. Those are burnable. But I have a tendency to just hold them, and I use them as packaging for things when I send it out. So you
Good
can
idea.
reuse your packaging.
Reuse
That's
packaging.
Yeah, that's a way to also be eco-friendly. I mean, people I don't buy boxes to send things to people. Everything they get from me has come to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that sounds maybe, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, it's my brand, and I've gotta, make sure it looks really." You know what? My brand is you're getting the box that I used before. My brand is I don't wanna pay for a new box because,
Yeah.
the thing is, I come from a small town up north where literally one of the, industries in our town was corrugated, box machines. They built them to create corrugated boxes. So I know that this is an industry, and I know that this is something that sustains people's lives. So I can't be like, don't do it. But if you can, and see, I don't do a whole lot of mailing. I mean, and my mailing doesn't have anything to do with my branding. So I can get away with shipping with pre-used boxes and things like that. But it's something to think about. If you don't mail out a lot
Mhm.
of things, you can definitely get away with that.
Now I have to show this comment. This is from Denise.
Hmm.
This is great. I also thrift good quality sweaters and reuse that finer. I have gotten some cashmere, alpaca, and
Hmm.
probably superwash merino or something like that, right? So
Yes.
that's a great way instead of throwing away that sweater,
Yes.
unravel it and use it for something else because that fiber is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that is such a smart way to repurpose something.
Mhm.
Because then, like we've talked about a couple of times, that all that stuff ends up in a landfill. And just because it's handmade doesn't mean it suddenly breaks down. It's still plastic.
No.
It's still going to be there
Yeah.
in 400 years. So
Yeah.
if you can find a way to pick anything apart, really, the sweaters, the blankets, the anything that you find. And there's a group I follow on Facebook that does thrifting finds. And a lot of people have been finding blankets and things like that. And they lament, like, how could anybody throw that out? And I understand how it happens because people die and other family members don't want all of it. And people like me who have like 57,000 blankets in my house, who's going to want all of them?
Yeah.
Um, so they're gonna probably some of them are gonna end up in a thrift store. But it's nice that people value that. But even if you wanted to take it home and pick it apart and use it, you could.
I know for some people that feels really wrong to pick something apart, but you're doing a good thing by reusing the fiber. You really are.
Yes, indeed. Maybe we should shift our thinking from my work is so sacred that it can't be redone to, do what you want with it. I had my fun with
Mhm.
the yarn. The people that had it enjoyed the yarn, what I made with it. And now you can do what you want.
Oh, man, that's harder said than done, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like, my ghost isn't going to stay with anything, so don't even worry about it.
Thank you.
Make a sweater
All
out of it.
right.
I don't care.
The last one is consider the life cycle of everything you make and buy. So,
Yeah, for
Biz, in that
sure.
same episode, you were talking about how even there gets to a point where a recyclable product can no longer be recycled because it
Yeah.
just gets to a place where it can't be used anymore.
Yeah.
And when you consider the life cycle, try to find something that's biodegradable or find something that isn't at the end of its life,
Mhm.
that you can only use once. Find something
Mhm.
that's maybe at the start of its life so that you can repurpose it over and over.
Mhm. We had talked about there were just a couple of things that are end cycle recycled items, like
Hmm.
an egg carton. An egg carton, like a paper one, is at the end of its paper life cycle. You can't recycle that typically anymore beyond that. But those make really great seed if you're a gardener and you want to start plants. Those make amazing pods that you can then put in the soil, poke holes in them, and it will eventually biodegrade and it will become a part of the soil, which will actually give you more aeration, etc. So, end product paper items like that, use for things that will still continue to feed the environment.
Hmm.
Things like yarn is an end cycle recyclable item. So that's why we're saying when you choose what you're going to use for a recycled item in your yarn use something that maybe breaks down. And now I love recycled yarn as far as like using PET and plastics and using that kind of stuff. That's great. Just remember it still has plastic in it. The only part that's going to break down and that is going to be your cotton. So
Hmm.
whenever we're using things, maybe think about you know, the content of how much you have. How much of this is going to still be here in 100 years?
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. Well, we have actually come to the end of our tips. I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's way more that we could talk about, but we've exhausted a lot of topics here. And as we said, I gathered links to 5 different articles.
Mhm,
One of them has actual pattern ideas for things that
mhm,
you can do for reusable stuff.
mhm,
Um, there, with a crafty therapist who gave us the tips that we looked at today,
mhm,
also has an article about it has a list of recycled yarns that she
mhm.
likes to use. Off the Beaten Hook has a 6-part series on being eco-friendly with your crochet. So there's a
Mhm,
lot of resource out there,
mhm.
and we'll put those in the description so you can check those out after the fact.
And next week's episode, we are actually going to have a rundown of reusable projects for to kind of cap off our Earth Month of eco-conscious crochet and fiber arts. So come back and see us because we're going to have a whole bunch of things, ideas, maybe stuff you haven't thought about.
Mhm.
Because I'll tell you what, when I did research a couple years ago, there was stuff that I ran into as far as reusable products that I went, huh, never thought of that. And it
Yeah.
might brighten you up, not brighten you up. Boy, that came across wrong. It might, like shine a light on something that you go, hey, I never thought of that. I could do that.
Mhm. Yeah. It's amazing some of the things that you can replicate in yarn. And
Hmm.
then
For sure.
you're not throwing it away. I had said when we planned these episodes that I was gonna try to make a Swiffer pad.
Uh-huh.
Whether the good Lord decides to give me the time to do that this week is going to be an interesting prospect. But
I
if I
think we were
do
both
come
going to
up
do that,
with
weren't
it,
we?
I don't know, but
I
um,
forgot.
I know.
Mm.
So I don't know if we're going to be able to come up with that. But if we do, I will be offering it as a free pattern on my blog. Um, so I hope that, we'll see whether
Yes.
we get it done or
Yes.
not,
Well, hopefully we can, because I know I've got a Swiffer in there that could definitely use a cover, because I keep
right?
forgetting to buy them. I'm just going to be honest. I'm terrible about it.
Yeah, I'm just really getting tired of throwing all that stuff away. So
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think we need to make it a mission. So we'll see what we can come up with for next week.
mhm.
All right.
Yep. And like we've said,
Yeah,
all of the things that we've referenced are going to be in the description of the video.
exactly. All
Okay.
right. Excuse me. What have you been watching? We haven't talked about this for three weeks.
I
3 weeks.
know. So I've probably watched a lot more, but the stuff that I've been watching in the last couple of days is I've been watching a show on Hulu called Stories from the Morgue. So that's my crime portion of this, but it's about forensic science helping investigations and helping them find the killer and stuff like that. The other thing, of course, I'm always I go for the dark stuff. I've been watching World War II documentaries. The one that I watched yesterday was specifically about the Gypsy genocide in World War II. My husband's grandmother's family was German Bohemians, and so I was very interested to find out about that, and so that was my documentary.
Yeah, my daughter was telling me about a documentary series called, I think it was called The Life of Otto, which is along the same lines, World War II, and
Mm,
what what some of the ethnic groups had to go through.
yeah.
And she said it was not something that you want to take lightly, but it sheds a
No.
lot of light on
Mhm.
what you read it in a book and it doesn't really resonate. But then you
No.
see it dramatized and you go, "Oh man."
Mhm.
So I may try to watch that.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been catching up. I didn't watch much TV at all while I was gone for 10 days, which is weird for me. Um, but I have been catching up on all of my procedurals, and they
Nice.
are really, really, really good. I mean, you and I have talked about NCIS on a
Uh-huh.
number of occasions. I'll tell you what, they may have hit a lull, but they are hitting their stride, and there are some amazing stories going on right now.
Cool.
Character development, just some really cool stuff. The same with the Hawaii version. So that's kind of the stuff I've been watching, and then catching up on things like So You Think You Can Dance. I'm so far behind. Um, and we watched Password last night, which is hilarious.
Have you ever seen the
You
show The Floor?
The what? The
The
floor?
Floor.
No, the floor.
We ran
Oh,
into it
no.
on Hulu. And Rob Lowe, me and my worthless reality TV. So Rob Lowe is the host of this thing, and there's like 81 people or something on this big grid, and they all have an expertise. And so somebody gets chosen. Well, then they've got to challenge somebody else in a different expertise. And basically they get shown pictures and they've got to identify it. It's kind of like Password, only you're not
Mhm.
given clues, you're just shown pictures. So Password is something I do want to watch though. But it was really all of a sudden we got super hooked on it. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
God, I have to see what happens next.
it's amazing. It really is amazing. But yeah, the episode we watched last night, Jimmy Fallon is on each one because I think he's the producer, so
Okay.
he has to be
Yeah.
on. It's his thing. But Joe Manganiello was the other celebrity, and
Yeah.
Jimmy's really good. He blew Jimmy out of the water. I mean, he was on fire. The
Yeah.
guy is
He's pretty smart.
just really smart. So, yeah, we're not watching anything. Well, baseball started too. So, I'm kind
Yeah.
of, I watch my procedural and then go, "Oh, here's the end of the ball game. There you go."
Uh, that's funny. And of course, we've gotten hooked on rugby, so we found another app on the Roku thing for being able to watch other rugby. And apparently there's a whole American league. And so
Mhm.
we've decided that we're going to root for the New Orleans team because they're only 3.5 hours away.
Oh, well, there you go.
No real reason other than that.
My daughter she's a huge rugby fan, and, she's always complaining that the American team doesn't ever quite make the World Cup finals,
No.
the competition, because 'cause
Mhm.
they're not as good as everybody else. But I have the feeling, like soccer, they're gonna catch up someday.
I think so too, because in the sevens, they were right there for both the women's and the men's teams. They almost did it. But those New Zealanders, man, I'll tell you what, they are
Oh,
strong.
and the
Strong.
British. Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Australia, New Zealand, the Brits, France, they're all really, really strong.
they got it going.
Crazy. They do.
All right, Biz. Well, I
Alrighty.
think
Well,
we've
that was it
solved
for
all
me.
the problems of the day because
I hope
there is
so.
no crying in crochet, right?
No, there isn't.
And
Wipe those
we
tears, girls
just
and boys.
if, like we said at the beginning, if you are watching in the Facebook group, either mine or Biz's,
Mhm.
this is the last episode that will stream live into the groups because
So
Facebook
now
is
there's
changing
crying in
things.
crochet.
There might be, but that doesn't mean you have to miss us. So
Right.
what we're gonna do, if you love to sit with us live and we love to have you live,
Yes.
make sure you join us either on YouTube or on our Facebook pages. One or the other, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, we're going to post the replays in our Facebook group so that you can still enjoy them. You just won't have the opportunity to interact with us. So
Yeah.
make sure that you join us in a live location because we love hanging out with you.
However, if
So,
you do leave a comment on one of the replays, just hashtag replay and we'll get it. We'll
yep.
answer.
Yeah, because it doesn't end up on YouTube or the Facebook Live
Mhm.
anymore. It's just a comment on the post. So,
Yeah. Yep.
anyway, we're going to say goodbye for now. Make sure you
Mm.
pick up that favorite crochet project and your favorite hook and your scrap yarn because we're going to
Yes.
be eco-conscious. And join us next week for our next episode where we're going to talk about recycle, reuse, and reduce. in
Mhm.
crochet. Boogie down. All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna let you go for now. So bye, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see
Yes.
you next week.